So once we activate it, we should get access to that share. So let's go activate, and you'll see here that we do get received bytes. We do get sent bytes. If you get 0 bytes received here, we may have a solution. We'll look at that in a few minutes on how to get that resolved. So let's cancel that, and we will go ahead and we will try to access this again once our connection has stabilized. Okay, it took a few seconds for the connection to really kind of establish and get the network going. Now we can see here that we have access. So if we use our credentials, there's our prime share that we had earlier in TrueNAS. And here's our files that we can transfer over and use. Okay, today we are going to finally be setting up a VPN service with our TrueNAS SCALE, as opposed to the previous VPN service on TrueNAS Core. We're gonna take a step away from OpenVPN, even though the service is available in TrueNAS SCALE. We're gonna go a little easier route and go with WireGuard this time. So let's take a look and get that set up on this machine. So you'll see here, this is my TrueNAS SCALE setup. I'm on the latest version, 22.12.4.2, and we have a small SMB share going. It's only 32 gigabytes, that's fine. It is a working share, so I can put files in here and work on it, and everything works great. So we want to be able to access this from a remote location, not just on our home local network. So let's get started with that. Once you have your TrueNAS in this state, at least we can start with the WireGuard VPN service. So what we'll do is we'll head on over to apps on the left panel here, and you'll see that we don't have any catalogs running and we don't have any applications. So go ahead and go over to your available applications. We're going to find WG-Easy, so that's WireGuard-Easy. If you can't see it here, just go to the search at the top and search for it there. It should show up in the default images that comes with TrueNAS. Go ahead and select that. We can see here the versions that it's on, what train, all that kind of stuff. So we'll click on install. And the setup here is going to be pretty straightforward, and this is where we are going to make some changes because the defaults that come with this install are not quite right for what we need to get this completed for the most common setups. So the first thing that we're going to change is the host name or IP. So you can use your IP address for your internet service. So if you don't know what that is, just go into Google and Google what's my IP, and that should show up. You can put that here, but more commonly is to get a dynamic DNS for your home internet. I have a video previously to set that up in your TrueNAS Core, but not with TrueNAS SCALE. The setup for dynamic DNS in TrueNAS SCALE should be the same. You just have to go to System Settings, go to Services, and select Dynamic DNS, and put in your settings there. I'll link my previous video on how to get that set up in the description or in the pop-up up here at the top corner. So I already have one set up, so it is going to be techworks.getsit.net. And then there's going to be a web UI where you're going to set up the users for this connection. Let's set a strong password for that. Keep alive, not a big deal. ETH0, this is going to change. This you're going to have to get from your dashboard or your network. So your device name probably isn't going to be ETH0. So if we take a look on my TrueNAS, we can come here, we can go to network, and we can see that it's ENS18 or ENS18. You can also go to your networking column and you can see here ENS18. So let's change the device name to that. So I'll have to go back here, put this information back in. So mine's going to be ENS 18. Yours will probably be different. We're going to leave the MTU default. We're going to leave the client IP address default as well. Don't change this to a 192.168. Like, don't change it to this, what's matching your local environment here that the TrueNAS is on. You want them to be different. So we will leave it default. It's different enough for my own home network to leave it the same, to leave it as the default. DNS, if you don't want 1.1.1, you can use 8.8.8. You can use whatever you'd like as your DNS. Then the next, one of the most important things is these ports. We have to change them. These are not the default ports that WireGuard likes to listen on, and this causes a lot of issues here. So we're going to make our lives easy, and we're going to change these to the default ports that WireGuard uses. So 51820 for the UDP port, and the web port is 51821, so one port above. We're going to leave host network available because when we VPN into the TrueNAS here, we want to be able to access the network that the TrueNAS is located on. So the configuration file, we're going to leave it here on the IX volume. This is where it's going to be stored. I don't need any additional storage or anything like that. That's fine. And for CPU and memory, I'm going to cut this down quite a bit because I don't need very high performing VPN service. It's a pretty simple service to perform. So we're just going to go down with 1000 M and 1 gig of CPU. We're only going to have 1 or 2 people connecting to this at any given time. This should be plenty. Go ahead and click on save, and we will let it deploy. So now that it's gone through, we should be able to go over to installed applications. We can see here that our container for WG Easy is deploying. So we'll wait for that to become active, and there it is. And we should be able to click on web portal, and it will load up the web portal that we set the password for earlier. This is where we'll create our users and our certificates for each person or each connection. So go ahead and click on web portal, and we'll see here we get the WireGuard portal. Put in our password, hit enter, and this is the interface. We can go ahead and we can click on new client. We can give it a name. We'll say user 1, and we'll create. So from here we have a few options. We can enable or disable this user from connecting, which is great. If you want to stop this person or this connection from happening, maybe the certificate's stolen or compromised, or the machine that was being used, you can disable it or you can delete it. These two options here are create a QR code. So you can pop this up on the screen, let someone scan it with their phone and have the connection information, or you can download it and send it to them. For us, we're just going to download this one, and we will come back to this later. So go ahead and download user01.conf. It's a pretty simple text file that has the information that's needed. So we'll come back to this a little bit later. We may need still to do some more configuration. First and foremost is going to be port forwarding on your router. So you'll need to go ahead and log into your router or your ISP's app, whatever it is, to port forward the specific port, which was 51820, in order to connect through our ISP's router into this WireGuard machine on the VPN. So I'll go and do that right now through my ISP's router, which is an app on my phone. Yours will probably be different because our ISPs are probably not the same. So you go ahead and do that, and I will go and do mine, and we'll be back in a minute. So now what we'll want to do is go ahead and load up or get onto your client end machine that's not on your LAN. This is going to be a machine that is on a network outside of your local area network, outside of your ISP router, all that. This is out somewhere else on the internet. Here we have the client machine, and we will go ahead and we're going to download the WireGuard client. So go ahead and head over to a browser and just, Google it, WireGuard client, and we can, the first Google search is going to be WireGuard here, or we can just head over directly to wireguard.com. Go to the installation, and we can download Windows Installer. I found with this one, we're going to actually want to click on, if you're on a Windows machine, browse MSIs. So the exe, you can download that. That will work fine. All it's going to do though is ask you to download the .msi file. So go ahead and download the appropriate MSI. We're going to do with AMD 64, the latest version. And then we'll go ahead and we'll install that. So this is where you're going to be, and what we'll do now is we will import a tunnel from a file, and we're going to get the file that we downloaded from the WireGuard web interface. We'll get that onto our client computer here. So let me go and fetch that and load it up. So we can go ahead and select import tunnels from file. And then we're going to go ahead and select our user01conf that we got onto our client machine. Select import, let that open up. And there we have it. So we have our public key for the peer and the interface, our endpoint here, and the port that we used and we did our port forwarding for. If we go ahead and edit that, basically it's the same information here in the text document, or on the .conf file, you'll see this exact same information. You'll also see an option here to block untunneled traffic, which basically means you're going to send all traffic over the VPN, and any local area network traffic intended for this local area network will also be blocked. So if you have network access to 192.168.0. whatever your IP for this local machine is, it will not go onto the network. It'll only cross over the VPN. Okay, so you may want to uncheck this if you still want local access to local resources on your local network of this client machine. That's not what we're going to do right now. We're going to click on save. Once we've saved, we can go ahead and we can click on activate here. And once we activate, we should have access to our resources. So before we do that, we will just go ahead and we will put in, so my ISP was having trouble with the port forwarding to that IP address, the .0.51 address. So we've changed the IP address of the TrueNAS over to .11, which was an available IP address and could be used for port forwarding. My ISP isn't really good at this kind of stuff. So we've just changed our IP address of the TrueNAS server, so everything else is the same though. So we should be able to not access our share that we were able to access earlier. Mind you, the IP was different on the local area network of where the TrueNAS server is. So on this client here, which is remote, doesn't have access to this simply because it's remote. This is not a local IP address that's available for this machine. So once we activate it, we should get access to that share. So let's go activate, and you'll see here that we do get received bytes. We do get sent bytes. If you get 0 bytes received here, we may have a solution. We'll look at that in a few minutes on how to get that resolved. So let's cancel that, and we will go ahead and we will try to access this again once our connection has stabilized. Okay, it took a few seconds for the connection to really kind of establish and get the network going. Now we can see here that we have access. So if we use our credentials, there's our prime share that we had earlier in TrueNAS, and here's our files that we can transfer over and use. So if you do have trouble with this, sometimes you won't get a connected transfer. You'll get 0 bytes here received. Let's go back to TrueNAS and we can see what one of the solutions is to that. So we'll stop this transfer. We'll deactivate here. And we'll go back over to TrueNAS and we'll check out the solution for that. Okay, so we're over back here in our TrueNAS with our new IP due to the port forwarding. So what we can do to fix the issues if you get no data transfer or you're not able to access other network resources where the TrueNAS is, we can go over and we can bridge the network of your primary interface. So this is how we do that. I have had to do this in the past in order to get a connection, just because the way Kubernetes and TrueNAS app connect to the TrueNAS and port forwarding works and all that kind of stuff. So this may be one of the solutions that will work for you if you're having this issue. So what we need to do is we need to create a bridge to this network, and that bridge will act as an interface to send traffic that's using that bridge out of this interface here. So we're just going to select the current network interface that's being used. You might have multiple here. Select the primary one that you want to use in the bridge that's connected to the network that you want. So you probably have DHCP selected in this section. Unselect that. If you don't have DHCP and you have a manually assigned address, go ahead and remove that address and save. Don't worry, this is not going to disconnect you right away. You actually have to select test changes in order for this change here that you've just created to be implemented into TrueNAS. So nothing's changed yet, which is perfect. Now what we're going to want to do is go add. We're going to select bridge for the new type. We're going to name it. I like to name mine just BR0. The bridge members, the only member that I have here is ENS18. So the one that we just removed the address from. Then we're going to add the address that we're using to here. Okay, so it's going to be the same address that you were on with your other network interface. Go ahead and hit save. So now we have two. We have a bridge and your original interface, and the bridge is using the IP address that was on the original interface. Now we can select test changes, confirm, and select test changes. So it'll say, please wait. It'll reconnect. You shouldn't lose connectivity. And then you'll have, 60 seconds here to say, yes, these changes work. If you don't get this, this means that something was wrong with the change that you made, and it will revert to the original settings after 60 seconds. So just wait 1 minute if you don't get this. So we got this pop-up. We're going to go ahead and save changes. Now we're on BR0. So all of the traffic is now being sent out BR0, which is connected to ENS18. Now what we need to do is we need to change our WireGuard over to that interface. So we can either click on stop, or we can just go to edit and change this to BR0. Scroll down and click on save. And our WireGuard application should redeploy using the new BR0 interface. And in the meantime, you may want to go to your applications settings here and change this to BR0 as well. This is the connection that basically your Kubernetes and other applications are going to use to download and all that kind of stuff. So you could probably click on save there. Okay, when you save that, it will probably redeploy your WireGuard as well. I saw that it became active, and then when I hit save, it redeployed it. So we'll give that a second to become active, and then we can go back and test out our changes. And then we have one more additional change that can be used if you still aren't succeeding with this connection. Okay, now that our WireGuard is active, let's go back to our client machine and see if we still are able to establish a connection. Okay, so we're back here on our client machine. Let's go ahead and click on activate and see if we still receive data. Okay, so there's our connection, and we'll see if we can still access our network share. And there we have it. Password is still saved and everything. And after this, if you're still having trouble with getting this connection made, there may be one more thing that we can do. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. So in TrueNAS, the last thing that we can do to try and get this connection working, we can stop our WireGuard. We will go over to System Settings. We'll go to Advanced. We'll select syscontrol or SYSCTL. Select Add. You'll get a warning that if you do these incorrectly, it could cause issues with your system running. And we're going to add two options here. And the first one is going to be net.ipv4.ip_forward. We're going to set that to 1, and we're going to leave the enabled mark checked. Then we'll add another option. This one is going to be net.ipv4.conf.all.src_valid_mark. Set that to 1. Save that as well. So basically IP forward, that allows us to forward traffic through the TrueNAS, and source valid mark. Basically, this allows policy routing in IP tables to mark packets with a valid source that may or may not use the same network that they came from. So it may use a different routing table, and these will be marked as valid because it's a source check. A little bit complicated. It's a lot of digging to find out this information and what it actually does, but it's there for a reason. It helps keep and maintain the connection, especially if you have multiple routing tables or multiple IPs attached to your TrueNAS. We only have one, so it's not that big of a deal, but give this a shot. Once these changes are made, we may need to reboot the TrueNAS. I haven't needed to, but it may be a good suggestion to reboot once you've added these options. So let's go over to our client and we will check out the connection and see if we can still establish it. So let's go do that. So we can revisit our client here and we can select activate, and we should still get a connection with those options, which we do. And we still have access to our share. So those are the two fixes if you're not able to establish an initial connection with WireGuard client. If you have other issues, hit up the comments. I will probably make a TrueNAS Scale OpenVPN video sometime in the future. Most of the stuff from the TrueNAS Core one, you can still use that information for TrueNAS Scale, I believe, if you know where the options are for the equivalent of TrueNAS Scale from TrueNAS Core. You can place all those options around in TrueNAS Scale, and I think you can still get a connection using OpenVPN. So I hope this has helped you out in getting a VPN connection to your TrueNAS Scale, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.